Let's talk about the GitHub API, and specifically what I want to talk about is the fact that there are two versions of it. We have the REST API and the GraphQL API. I'm not going to do a big lesson into what APIs are and that kind of stuff, but I want to give you a comparison between these two to understand what are the pros and cons of each of them. So let's do a breakdown quickly here. So the first thing is the design philosophy. So for the REST API, this is resource-based, and this means that usually with REST APIs, you'll have a different endpoint per resource. For GraphQL, you'll have a single endpoint with queries for precise data requests. For methods, we can use get, post, put, delete. But for GraphQL, they usually use post. For data fetching, we can have multiple requests for related data. For GraphQL, you use a single request that can be very complex, but can get whatever you want. You can have overfetching or underfetching. For GraphQL, you have precise data fetching, so you're getting exactly what you want and nothing more. For performance, it is less efficient for complex systems. But you know what? I think that is something we could argue because I still really like REST APIs. For GraphQL, it's more efficient for complex queries. For caching, it's easier due to HTTP methods. For GraphQL, it's more challenging due to post methods. The learning curve, it's super easy to use REST APIs. GraphQL requires a lot more knowledge to pick up. For REST API, it's server-driven structure. For GraphQL, it's client-driven. Okay. For versioning, you often have to do API versioning for REST API. For GraphQL, you usually don't have to, and that was the huge reason for having GraphQL APIs. The ecosystem for REST API is mature with extensive tools. GraphQL is still growing, but the point is that GitHub has both, and these are the two big flavors of APIs on the internet. And I think the major reason they did GraphQL was when they opened the GitHub App Store, so you get exactly the data you wanted because the REST APIs didn't always return the data that people needed to build apps. And I think that was the reason why, because I remember trying to build an app when the App Store first came out, and I had to use GraphQL. In fact, I learned GraphQL because of GitHub, because they were one of the early adopters of it when it came out. But there you go.